So we sat here last week on this podcast and we said, when are we going to get to see this front three? We've seen it, as a sort of, an in action, something that you come to during that Champions League game as a sort of a substitution. We finally got to see it from the start. Ronaldo, Dybala, Higuain, all three of them up front against Udinese. And Mina, I thought it looked pretty good.
I know that you thought it was fantastic. What I thought was firstly is because Sarri was like, well, it's Udinese, I can actually play this trident, What actually bothers me is the way that some of this press have covered the trident. Because whatever you want to say, I think Lazio should be the inspiration. If they've managed to have these 4 men score goals and still find tactical balance, then I'm not sure why Juventus and their superior squad cannot do the same. And so he wheeled them out for, over 20 minutes against Bayer Leverkusen, who, with all intents and purposes and with all great respect to the German side, they are run by Peter Bosch. So for you to then say to them, oh, well, it was a good idea to bring them on at the final because they were tiring. If you had started with them, they would have still won that match. So this is what bothers me about this. And it's not like we only have to wheel out the trident when they're playing the likes of Udinese and whoever is sort of, propping up the league at the moment, because Udinese are a very bad team. But Juventus are so much better with those front three. There is creativity, there's more desire to get there. You can find Ronaldo being happier. I feel like all three are happier, and it also works because the midfield is doing its part. I thought what was so good about Juventus is not just what the front three did, but how good and compact they were in trying to win possession high up the pitch, being united in their performances. You can see in the second half, they totally took their foot off the gas, which is normal. You see that with a lot of big sides who have very dominating performances in the first half. But this is something that I want to see all the time. And I don't want it to be wheeled out just against the likes of, Sampdoria, which is probably what's going to happen midweek. But I want it to be against the big teams. This is why Sarri is there. This is why Allegri was at the time spoken about as being too defensively cautious, because we need to find the balance. You know what? We opted against balance, so can we see it more often, please?
I think I agree with the concept of the front three. I think part of the problem is there isn't a fourth. Like, there isn't a fourth who can actually do some of what these front three do. Obviously, you can put Bernardeschi or Douglas Costa into the front three, but they're going to interpret the position differently, right? And that's where I struggle with this. That's where I don't see this as something that you can do every week, because you can do it every game if you play these three guys, but you can't play these three guys every week. So I think it's going to remain something that you use for certain games. I would actually want to see it more in big games
than the smaller ones.
Than against smaller teams.
But do you think Douglas Costa sort of offers maybe not everything?
Well, no, because Dybala often, and Higuain will take turns going in behind, and we saw, that pass from Higuain to Ronaldo for the goal was unbelievable. Douglas Costa isn't going to do that. Douglas Costa will just start wide and run at people and either put in crosses or shoot. It's just a different interpretation.
Okay.
Look, against most teams, it doesn't really matter. You could play Huey, Dewey, and Louis up front. And Juve would be fine. I think what they have to get right is the midfield. And again, if you carry a front three or even this front three, it does put strain on the midfield. And then that means that you either have to rotate more, because, I would hope we agree that, at least for my money, Pjanic and Blaise Matuidi should be two of the three most of the time. But, Matuidi's getting older. Pjanic, you have to kind of wrap in cotton wool because he's got no natural substitute. That's where you need to work on. So then maybe you do something where you keep rotating the midfield so they all stay fresh and run like maniacs, possibly, but then you don't have the chemistry in the midfield. I don't know. My guess is this is something that we're going to see more regularly, but we're only going to see it in certain situations, which is fine.
But he wants to play it against the small teams, and I agree with you that it should be played against the big teams.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe you play against the small teams as you kind of build chemistry, but then once you've done that, save it for the big teams.
I think it's worth remembering because it's easily forgotten that when Sarri first went to Napoli, the three Smurfs up front was never the plan. That was not his sort of starting idea. It was something that he fell upon that. To an extent, he was sort of stuck with because he didn't have any other strikers and moved Mertens inside, and when it worked, he ran with it. So I don't think we should exclude yet the possibility that this works for him and he runs with it. I think, give him the time to see.
The big difference, though, is that those guys were all substantially younger.
Yes.
At the time. And also,
we all were.
But also Callejon, with all due respect to Callejon, Insigne and Mertens, they don't have the rep, or certainly at the time when they did that. So it's a lot easier to go and sell them on this idea that, work hard for each other and we can make this work. I don't know if that's the messaging that you want to give to Cristiano.
I do think that on this occasion that I thought Dybala and Higuain worked really hard defensively to make this work, and I do think that you need that both going forward.
It's sort of fascinating just on that. Like, it's fascinating, I think, how careers play out. And I think that when you look at, for instance, to call back to the last Italian team that did win the Champions League, when Samuel Eto'o went there, no one would have said, I can see him chipping in it basically at fullback against Barcelona, because that's not who he was. He was a centre forward, and he actually played a lot of that season out on the wing. And I think that when you get a player in the right moment of their career, you can get that extra something from them, because actually they're proving something to someone. And right now, with Higuain and Dybala both, I think you might have them in that moment where
they're desperate to
they've got
prove
enough
something.
of like a desire, because both of them were supposed to be gone this summer. And I think there's a little something in both of them, and especially with probably Higuain, given how sort of badly his time away from Juventus went. I think that maybe you have two players who you can get just a little bit more. Ronaldo, I don't know. I mean, Ronaldo has always been an extreme competitor.
You see, this is
But
the one
other two-
listen, I agree with you about being an extreme competitor, but he's just watched 2 Ballon d'Ors not go to him.
Yeah.
I think now he is on firstly, this is the first time that he scored in 4 matches in a row. Now, what's interesting is I think in 4 of the 5 goals that he did score, they've all come when the Trident was playing, which goes to show that, and because a lot of the time I agree that perhaps that he should have been open to criticism because he wasn't great, but I do think it's amazing how much better he can be when he has players that are closer to him, that are nearer to him and making the right runs. I would like a little bit more mobility. I don't know how to judge this game because, again, it is Udinese. But if we want Ronaldo to be the very best in Europe, then I do think that you need to surround him with this creativity.
Okay. Creativity, or if you need another striker who can be part of the rotation, who will work hard.
Mandzukic.
They do have a guy at the club who does exactly that.
Yeah. God only knows what's happening with that.
I think it's I would imagine that Ronaldo will be happy with whatever system gets him goals, right? Like that's who he is. But I do think it's I don't know. I suppose at their worst under Allegri, the Juventus problem was just give the ball to Ronaldo and expect him to resolve it, and that's not what should happen if you use all 3 of these guys. If you use all 3 of these guys, you're getting the ball to him with help in the right places, and that's obviously a better formula for scoring goals.
To be fair to Allegri, I do think that it was very much individual play rather than just that. But I think that it was hard for him to find a system. He didn't have Douglas Costa for a lot of it. Dybala is on another level this season. He didn't have Higuain only. He only had Mandzukic, and I do think Higuain is superior in talent. Mandzukic may be superior in other qualities. But, let's see what happens.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.